We'll just wing this.
Yeah,
we'll just wing
that's
this
what we do
sucker.
every time. Hey guys,
Yeah.
I'm Dave March, and welcome to Land of Confusion. And this is my co-host.
Hi, I'm Don Tillman, sidekick, and in lovely Palo Alto, California, where the skies are yellow today.
Okay. Are the fires over then?
Well, some of them, not all.
Okay.
There's an awful lot of fires. There's an awful lot on fire right now.
So you're like that dog in that picture?
Exactly. This is fine. And I just discovered that you can get This Is Fine dog plushies, which I think is just the coolest thing ever. I got to get one of those. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. And here's Max, our Ricochet's very own Max.
Hey guys.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
And now you are in this little town in New Hampshire, right?
Yes, David has the welcome to New Hampshire behind him.
Oh, look at that.
But, I don't think that he's actually in New Hampshire.
No.
Being Canadian and bilingual, he can read the sign which says, "Welcome, bienvenue, New Hampshire." We have about 2,500 people in my town, and it's pretty small. I live next door to the brother of one of our selectmen, who I have clashed with, the guy who's on the board of selectmen, and that it's a little awkward, I guess, because I would probably trash him quite a bit more if his brother didn't live next to me. And his brother is a nice guy. But the brother who is on the board of selectmen is a total waste of space.
Now, the other famous person who lives in a small town in New Hampshire is Mark Stein. How far are you from him? Do you know?
About 2 hours, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, he lives somewhere up north of Hanover, or north of Plymouth. And it's kind of hard to go east-west in New Hampshire. Most of the roads are north-south. I mean, there are
never thought about that before.
Yeah, there are plenty of small roads that go east-west, but I drove over to Lake Champlain once, which is on the other side of Vermont, and it took like 5 hours because the entire way was on back roads. But my town, so Stein is sort of mid to upper west part of New Hampshire, my understanding. I don't know the exact town that he lives in.
In preparation, I looked it up. It's called it's called Woodsville.
Wow.
Woodsville. Well, I have to look that up. But I am over on the eastern side of the state in the Lakes region, what's called the Lakes region. My town is on Lake Winnipesaukee, which is the biggest lake if you look at the map of New Hampshire. And,
big fan of the lake, yeah.
There's Woodsville. Where is that? Oh, yeah, okay. That's like 3 hours from here.
Okay, so you don't run into him on a dog walk or anything?
Not usually, no. But so I'm like an hour north of Portsmouth, but there's like a highway that goes most of the way. So, but I'm from Maine. I grew up in Maine and went to school in Maine, and then I moved to New York City when I was 23, and I spent 9 years there. And it was actually in New York City that I met Don in New York City. I don't know if you remember the Ann Coulter Ricochet recording. I always thought that was you. Maybe that wasn't you. Maybe that was a different Don.
Me, Don?
Yeah. No. Did you go to that? No.
Oh, the Ricochet meetup in New York City?
Yeah.
No, I didn't. No.
I wonder who that was. I always thought it was you. That's funny. I had an image in my head for at least, what was that? Was like 8 years ago. I was like, oh yeah, Don Tillman.
No, was not me.
That's embarrassing.
Or
Yeah, that's
time
right.
when Ann Coulter was mainstream enough to be on Ricochet, and now she's much more different place.
Well, Rob and she are still, good friends and hang out, in their personal lives, as far as I'm aware. But yeah, she was kicked off of Twitter last week for a couple days. So, but yeah, it was New York City that made me realize that I was not a liberal.
Okay.
And probably more so now.
Yeah, well, I left in 2014, and I'm pretty glad that I did. We left. De Blasio was elected in the fall of 2013 because they're like an off-year election for the mayor, and so he was elected. He took office, I guess, in December 2013, and we left in the end of October 2014, and I swear to you that I could feel the city starting to fall apart because I had moved there, I guess, right before the end of the first Bloomberg administration, and then he would have been reelected in fall of 2005, so like a couple months after I got there. And he was still really maintaining the Giuliani policies of policing, and he did all the way through probably 2010. He did this thing where he got them to change the law so that he could run for a third term.
Yep, I remember that. Very
and now, I guess I think De Blasio's in his third term, so that didn't end up too well. But the last couple of years of Bloomberg, he was starting to, I guess maybe he was thinking he was going to run for president. So I don't know. He started courting the liberals and started.
Oh yeah, he did. That's right.
Yeah, he started relaxing somewhat. But when De Blasio
he was one of
in,
the 29, I think.
Well, he ran this time, yeah. But this was back in, like 2012, 2013. He was already starting to, I think he had declared himself an independent, and he was the city was just falling apart. I don't know. How big is Palo Alto?
Oh gosh, around 60,000 people or so.
Well, that seems huge to me, but
yeah. Well, it's not a small town.
Yeah, not New York City standards size, but I never really was big into being a city person because I grew up in a town that now has about probably 8,000 people, but it had
that's right.
it was a small town. I graduated in a class there were 79 of us who graduated from high school in my class, so it was pretty small. And going to New York City was quite a culture shock,
yeah,
to say the least, and ended up being literally tired for like 2 years because you walk down the street and people passing you, and there's so much stimulus, and when you're new to New York, to living in New York City, the tourists all ask you for directions because you make the mistake of meeting them in the eye.
Yep.
And you learn after a while to never look anybody in the eye because otherwise it's overwhelming, the stimulus, you have to tune a lot of things out. And also got sick a lot in the city. So, I was always coming down with colds and the flu and things like that. And when I moved back up to New England, suddenly I didn't get sick for years. I've been here 6 years. I've been sick like twice. So, but
makes sense. I believe that.
And I have not gotten the COVID. And I have not worn a mask a single time, except for, well, one time I joined a gun club, and for orientation, I had to wear a mask, even though it's outside. And that was, the range it's outside.
Mm-hmm.
And that was right sort of at the beginning. So it was almost less political than it is now, the whole mask thing. And my friend is the range officer who was doing the orientation, so I didn't want to embarrass him or get him in trouble. So I had a mask for that. They also made us wear plastic gloves. And
That's not happened here. I can't think of any, like, I've seen people doing it, and that's, go do whatever you want. But here we definitely has never been mandated, at least for like employees of companies or something. But for your
masks or gloves?
Gloves. Masks, yeah. So what happened here in Ontario is our premier is conservative. He was very strict early on, but he relaxed hold. So we here in Ontario, when there was a protest, anti-lockdown protest, there was like 200 people showed up because it's not that big a deal, because it's very lightly held here, versus where Quebec, where they have the police, provincial police have been ordered to enforce mask policy, and they have tens of thousands of people show up to their protests. So,
oh, really? In Quebec?
In Quebec, yeah. Montreal, yeah. So Canada, most of the provinces have been doing pretty well running things. New Brunswick is, according to my girlfriend, she lives there, it's completely open, except for the borders where they have cops checking everyone's cars.
Provincial borders, or?
Yeah, provincial borders.
Yeah, wow.
But I mean, they had no cases there, so they've locked themselves down, and so they don't get it. But in Ontario, like our premier said, I believe in masks, but the cops have better things to do than harass people. So it's now a municipal bylaw that passes the mask enforcement. And in the mask enforcement, straight out says, we're really reliant on you, the public, to do this. We don't want to send our bylaw officers out to enforce this if we don't have to. So basically, you have to be a real jerk about it to get a cop. And according to the Human Rights Code in this country, you can't... you don't have to produce evidence of being a restricted person. Like one person in my building, she has health issues. She doesn't have to wear a mask. So if you have that, you don't have to do it. The only time you ever have to prove that you have a medical condition is when you fly on an airplane.
Yeah. So in the United States, we have the ADA, which is the Americans with Disabilities Act. And I mean, at our grocery store here, prior to all of this, people take their dogs in the grocery store. And I asked the manager one time, I was like, the dogs are cool, but it is a grocery store. And this woman was holding her dog in her arm, like cradled in her arm, because it was a little tiny dog. Yep. And she was at the salad bar. And I was like, I didn't like say I'm filing a complaint and can you kick her out or anything. I saw a manager and I just asked him about it. I was like, hey, what's up with that? And he was like, oh, we can't tell people not to bring their dog because it might be a service dog. And I was like, well, this didn't seem like a service dog. And he said, yeah, but we can't challenge whether it's a service animal or not because that's illegal.
Oh, okay. Around here, you can challenge because they're supposed to have.
You could generally say service dogs only. But a dog spit is sterile, so as we all know. So it's fine.
Right. A dog's mouth is cleaner than a human mouth, right? Well, so that's what they say.
So over here, everybody's wearing masks outside. I go for a walk every day, up in the little hills here, and everybody's got a mask. Everybody a damn mask, and it's kind of creepy to have walking down the street and people suddenly put their mask on when they pass by me or they go to the other side of the street.
Right.
I feel sort of like a leper here.
Are you're not wearing a mask?
I never do.
Yeah.
Except for stores require it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
go into a store, I have to. But other than that, I won't. There's no reason.
I avoid some stores if they say, wear a mask, and others. There was another grocery store that I went into. They did a mask requirement like the first week in August, I think it was, or last week in July. I mean, there's really no reason to wear a mask at this point in this, where we are in this progression of this virus. And so I needed milk and eggs. and I think it was near closing time, so I wouldn't be able to get to the other store. So I just walked in and got my eggs and milk, and I was standing in the checkout line, and the guy took my money, and as he's handing me the change, he says, "Oh, sir, we require masks now." And it's like, oh, okay, but not until after you take my money.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
well, I think he was just being polite. Right?
he wanted my money.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So it's not actually, so masks, in my belief, I mean, certainly there are people who have are earnest, and they think, I'm going to wear this mask because it'll help. I don't question people's motives, but I view overall wearing a mask, it's performance art, particularly because most people don't wear them correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And they wear them over and over. They put them in their pocket, take them out, touch both sides of them. I mean, when you read the rules about masks, it's like the rules about disposing the light bulbs. You know what I mean? The ones with mercury.
Yep.
Nobody does that. You rake the bulb, you just sweep it up and throw it out. But you look, there's a list of 10 or 12 different things that you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Open the windows, get the animals and children out, air out the entire room. I don't even know what all the stuff.
I call it hygiene
location.
theater. And
yeah.
And just one beautiful photograph published that had a store that had masks for sale, and they had a whole rack of masks in different styles and colors, and they had a mirror there, so you could
I saw this.
Try it on.
You can try it on.
Genius.
In fairness, I assumed that they just swapped out the sunglasses display for mask display.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, I'm gonna put this on. Nah, I don't like that one.
What
about
mask
this one?
industrial complex.
Yes, exactly.
and cough a few times in between, and it's just great.
Yeah, I was listening to the Bongino podcast. He said somebody at his church had pulled the mask down to sneeze in church service. It's like missing the point.
Yep.
So I see people, they're wearing them below their nose, because you can't breathe. You pull it down under your chin, or even I have a beard. The mask it says on the CDC website, the masks is supposed to be touching your skin all around the edges, tight around your nose, and tight to your cheek, and under your chin. So masks, according to the CDC, are not effective for men who have beards. So at what point is the government going to mandate that men shave?
Right.
If it was for real.
Yeah.
And another point of evidence that I've observed that it's all just performance art, that most people don't really, a lot. And like I said, some people are earnest, but a lot of people are just like, oh, whatever, I'll do it. I'll put it on. And that's fine. Like you said, if you need to go into a store, that's fine. But at least here we have the arrows now in in the aisles at the grocery store and other places,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody pays attention to those.
Nope.
Nope.
So, and why would you? Because you walk halfway down the aisle and you go, peanut butter, and it's down at the other end of the aisle.
You're not going to go like.
Yeah, no. So you go back, and so everybody's doing this, even if the people who are wearing the masks, but they don't actually, they don't actually believe that crossing somebody in the aisle is gonna hurt them.
In fact, when they have the mask on, a lot of people I notice stop ignoring social distancing. They think they're immune now.
Right. Well, and the masks too. At least here, the CDC says if you wear a mask if you can't social distance. So is it one or the other, but now it's both?
Mm-hmm.
And it started out. And listen, it is true that facts don't necessarily change, but come to light.
Mm-hmm.
Circumstances change. So, okay, maybe at the beginning, one thing was understood, masks aren't necessary, but now they are. But it doesn't make sense to me that a piece of cloth over your, especially and people wear, a bandana,
mm-hmm.
or the plastic face shields. And I know how air works,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, and I was at a restaurant eating at the bar, and the bartender was wearing one of those,
mm-hmm.
as he served us our plates of food. Isn't it just directing his breath straight down onto our plate of tacos? So, and
it's a weird thing. And I think it shows, on a broader scale, how governments will overreact or move to set restrictive laws locally,
mm-hmm.
When given a chance, when given an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And also that, that Nancy Pelosi hair blowout incident in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
She got a blowjob.
They call it a blowout. I'm no expert.
Was it so? Yeah, I watched these two scientists on this YouTube show called Lockdown TV. Someone started it up in Europe, and he had these two high-level guys come in, and they said, "Truth is, we don't." He asked them, "What's going on with masks?" And then he said, "Truth is, we don't know. We're hoping. I think that's what the governments are hoping, and maybe they thought that issuing the masks is going to get people back to work and doing stuff." But I don't think that necessarily worked. And there's just.
Yeah, so I think that in terms of the masks, the Surgeon General saying in March, don't wear a mask, there's no reason to wear a mask. And Dr. Fauci, our Lord and Savior, him saying, you don't need to wear a mask. And then later saying, well, I only said that because I didn't want there to be a run on masks because the surgeons need them, or the doctors. So they were either just lying to us then or they're lying to us now.
Yep.
And I noticed in recent polling, I don't have it in front of me, but that confidence in the CDC has plummeted over the last 6 months.
I believe that. Yeah.
Yeah, it went from, generally speaking, maybe 85% confidence in the general public to 55%, which is still a majority, but that's a pretty big drop.
Mm-hmm.
And the previous number is like, well, sure, why wouldn't you believe the CDC? They're a bunch of scientists, right?
Yeah.
But well, what comes to mind is a cartoon I saw where a woman's in the doctor's office and she says, so when do you think that, the coronavirus will go away, and the doctor says, I don't know, I don't really pay attention to politics.
Dum-bum.
And to me, the whole thing is politics. In the United States, the entire response has been about the election, period. That's what it's about. And so what has happened globally, that's what's happened in the United States. But what's happened globally is a sort of cascading panic attack by governments who always have the incentive to overreact.
Yeah.
One of the things that's totally nuts about the Democrats, what they're saying now, with the Woodward book that just is coming out. It hasn't even come out yet. It's coming out next week, I think.
I just don't pay attention anymore because, like, Trump's going to say everything. Like, Garrity in his thing this morning, he's just like, everything, all the quotes are just things he's already said in the media. So there's nothing shocking here.
There's nothing new. It's literally what he was saying in public at the time, and everybody who hates Trump is trying to flog it as if it's a new revelation. What he's on tape saying to Bob Woodward is, I don't want people, to panic. And that's what every elected politician in the United States and the world was doing at the time.
Yeah.
So, well, I'm also making the argument that most politicians were also overstating had the incentive to go into lockdown. The whole, if it saves one life. Well, what about the lives that have been lost and that are being damaged by these lockdowns? I think that the isolation that's been going on. I mean, I work from home already, but it's very bad for people's mental states.
Mm-hmm.
And like you mentioned, you're walking down the street, people see you and they like run away from you or give you dirty looks. That's not healthy either,
Right.
So
right. And so I think, of course, I agree. And I think the extra incentive is to make the economy look bad in this election year.
Right.
And I think and many cities have done that. And this is all at these decisions are all made at a local level for the most part, right? And different states, different counties, different cities, they can choose to do what they want, and they tend to have been overreaching, and gives them more power and makes Trump look bad during this election year. Oh, it's a win-win.
Unless they all get thrown out.
Well, that's another thing. Some of them won't. A lot of them won't be.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of these cities. The riot cities recently have been run by Democrats for like 50, 60, 70 years, and Republican has not run recently, or at least not run seriously.
Yeah.
And even if they did run, and even if they did win, the infrastructure that's already there is far left, and it would take them down one way or another. So,
and that's what's happened at the national level.
Trump
is president, but all the agencies and departments are run by hard left, people.
The national security guys, I know some of these guys. They're just pissed off because he's just ending their gravy train. Really, they're very Republican, very conservative people, but they're upset because he wants to cut them off. He doesn't want to have.
So let me revise what I just said, which was hard left. But yeah, you're absolutely right. He's pissed off people who are Republicans as well. It's both the party apparatus, the deep state, if you will. People, you mentioned Garrity. ever read his book, The Weed Agency, that he published like 10 years ago or something, his little novel. I mean, not little, but it's kind of short. But anyway, where it's this agency that is, you don't even know what it does really, and you can't get rid of it.
Yeah, yeah.
And it just he covers, it's a fiction novel,
Yeah.
but he
Or
you know, over a period of 30 years, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and nobody has any idea what it does or where the money goes. So,
Right, and government's set up for that. The money source is basically infinite, right? And the ability to grow a bureaucracy is virtually infinite and rewarding. There's incentive for it. So that's all going to lead that way. I think if there would be some reverse incentive, for instance, what if it were easier to fire a government employee than to hire one? That would be a game changer. I don't see it happening, but that would be a game changer.
I think the better way would just go back to the spoil system.
yeah, I mean,
in that, but you know,
the argument against that at this,
people.
yeah, the argument against that at this point is that the government is so large that it's really hard to rehire all those people every 4 to 8 years, you know? But maybe we should have a smaller government then.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I mean, yeah, I'm totally in favor of the spoil system, you know, and I'm totally in favor of a new president can come in and fire everybody, which is, you know, what Clinton did with all the U.S. attorneys, and what I guess Bush did fire some of them, and then that was a scandal, and then Obama came in and fired them all on his first day, and that wasn't a scandal because he was a Democrat, and then Trump came in and fired a couple of them, not even a lot of them, if I recall, but he fired the guy in New York who refused to go or something. And
yeah, there's a few other people. He when he came into power, he fired all the ambassadors because Obama had staffed a lot of Democrat donors.
Yeah, well, he didn't fire the ambassador
spoil system.
Trump didn't fire the ambassador to the Ukraine, who was that woman who stabbed him in the back. You know, so. And
that's Trump's tagline. You're fired. Right?
Yeah. I mean, seriously, my biggest complaint with him is that he hasn't fired more people,
right.
You know? So, I mean, Rob likes to yell at me on the Ricochet podcast that I will never criticize Trump for anything, but it's not true. It's just, I won't, you know, on command. And I should revise that and say I think he's only done that twice. But I was on the Ricochet podcast once, and he was like, "Say something that Trump has done that's bad." And I was like, "No, I don't have to. You do that every week." You know,
you say something Trump's good.
Yeah. So, and then, yeah, I mean, and I'm not entirely happy with how Trump has handled COVID, but it's a tightrope act that he's doing, you know. And
yeah, it's a tough thing because the exponential growth rate was calculated to be really large, and you got to do something early on to keep that in. Otherwise, it would just let's go this way. I guess I don't know. It would go just like that.
Yeah.
Because if you can calculate the rate of growth, you can predict pretty accurately. And so that didn't end up happening, and that was good.
Yeah. At least we have Sweden as a controlled space that they did all this limited shutdown. They didn't lose. They lost 4,000 people, but according to some of the models, they were supposed to lose like 50 or 60,000 people. We now found out a lot of the models are garbage. Thanks to this
complete garbage.
We found out a lot about different things. I believe they're tracking now in the UK. They're going to say that the lockdown is going to kill more people than the virus did.
Sure, but the actual viral growth, you know, what they call viral growth in business, the viral growth mechanism is real. That's real. And the other stuff, maybe not so much, but the viral growth mechanism is real. And so I think, we've also gotten like the worst statistics. You can't figure out what they mean. To me,
I don't believe it.
Yeah,
Any of the
right.
numbers.
To me, the two important statistics really are deaths per capita and the use of the emergency rooms. The percent of hospital resources that are used. Those two things, to me, are the big numbers. And if the deaths per capita can be, brought down to roughly any other cause of death per capita, and if you're not clogging up the emergency rooms, it's probably doing okay.
We keep on seeing states revising their numbers because they keep on changing how they count them.
That's another thing. That's really important. And that makes all the difference in the world.
So my brother-in-law died last year from cancer. And also my mother died from cancer 12 years ago. But actually, my mother had breast cancer. My brother-in-law had, I think, because colon cancer is the worst one. But they actually both died from pneumonia.
Yeah.
So I don't say that my brother-in-law died from pneumonia. He died from cancer. I say that my mother died from cancer. And I was in the room for both of them. And obviously my mother dying was, for me personally, harder to take.
Yeah.
And my wife was in the room both times as well. And her brother dying was harder for her to take. That's natural. But I know that if my brother-in-law had died this year, he probably would have died from COVID and would have been counted as COVID. In the town where I live, where we have 2,500 people, there have been 3 cases and 2 deaths that I'm aware of. And you can look at the map of New Hampshire on the New Hampshire Health and Human Services, and it says that in my town there have been between 1 and 4 cases. So there might be one other that I'm not aware of. One was a doctor who volunteered in April to go to New Jersey to treat COVID patients. And he went down there for 2 weeks, contracted COVID, came home, and recovered. He was like 52 or something. And there was a picture of him in the media of afterwards of him down in New Jersey in the ward. He's got full on, gear like from a movie with some, extremely contagious, like Contagion or whatever. Mask, goggles, face shield, like plastic suit.
Yep.
He got it. He was in the COVID ward, so it makes sense. But he recovered because he was relatively younger. There was a gentleman who was in his late 80s who had Alzheimer's, and he died. And there was a woman who, I'm not sure how old she was, probably in her 60s. She had brain cancer. She died from COVID.
Yeah.
So
it sounds like we have these like 3 cases here. One is dying from COVID alone. The second would be dying from COVID with a comorbidity.
yeah.
And third would be dying from COVID, but really from something else. So like the famous case of the motorcycle accident, who happened to have COVID, who died.
Oh, right. Yeah, and there was somebody who fell off a ladder,
Fell off a ladder.
People got shot and were counted as COVID deaths.
Right.
Yeah.
So I like George Floyd, right? He had COVID. That's a COVID death. So I think there are these 3 cases. It's purely COVID. There's comorbidity and unrelated. and I'm not convinced they got those clearly delineated.
I think the hospitals and the states get money
That too.
for each death.
Right.
And in New Hampshire, the governor, who is supposedly a Republican, Chris Sununu, the son of John Sununu, former chief of staff to George H.W. Bush, his son Chris is the governor, and there's been a state of emergency since like March 26th. He can only declare a state of emergency for 21 days at a time, but he can renew it indefinitely. So he's renewed it. I lost track, whatever it is now, 12 or more times or whatever. And I know somebody who's in the legislature here who met with him a couple of weeks ago and asked him, why you still have a state of emergency? We have only 6 people in the hospital for COVID. And mind you, the model that everybody was passing around, I forget the Washington State one, forget what that was called, but that was like the one that everybody was using to say, right at the end of March, beginning of April, this is going to destroy us. We were supposed to, at peak in New Hampshire, have over 1,000 people in the hospital, which would be more than our capability for like intensive care or something.
Yeah.
Whatever the metric was. It was supposed to be like at least 1,050 people in the hospital at a time. Our actual peak was 131 people in the hospital at one time.
Okay.
And that was like on May 27th or something.
So it's an order of magnitude.
Yeah.
So what did Sununu say to your friend?
Chris Sununu said, my poll numbers are really good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's not an exact quote, but
yeah,
and they are. They're really great. We just had a primary 2 days ago, and he won, I think, around 90% of the vote, of the Republican vote. And his poll numbers are in the 80s or, around that. And I'm sure he'll win re-election. And I'm glad that he has issued a lot of vetoes because in 2018, the Democrats took over both the state House of Representatives and the state Senate. Now in New Hampshire, the governor is a 2-year term. Only Vermont and New Hampshire do that.
Yeah.
So New
anymore. I know New York used to do it way back in the day.
Yeah, but not since like a long time ago. Yeah. So he ran in 2016 for the first time. He had to run for re-election in 2018. So this gives you an idea how popular he is and how squishy he is that he won re-election in 2018, even though the Republican Party got wiped out in the House of Representatives, State House, and State Senate. Where was I going with this?
He's squishy, on the other hand.
He's a big squish. Is
anybody running against him seriously?
Oh, in November?
Yeah.
There's a Democrat who's the state Senate president. And he just won his primary. And by about like 51% against his opponent. There were 2 of them who were running. And so I wouldn't say that he really has a chance against Sununu. Luckily, because Sununu is a better governor than him, just not on COVID.
Yeah.
Sununu has vetoed a lot of legislation, a lot of gun control legislation that was passed last year and this year, and he's issued more vetoes than any governor in New Hampshire history.
Okay.
So, I got to say that's good.
Mm-hmm.
He is better than the Democrat.
An alternative, yes.
Yeah, I voted for him twice, but reluctantly.
Mhm.
And I voted for his primary opponent this time, but not very many people, agreed with me. But he's just always been super squishy. We went to see him in the summer of 2016 before he got elected the first time, before his first primary even. And it was at an event, breakfast, 4th of July breakfast event. And my wife asked him a question about abortion. And because she's obviously a woman, as our Ricochet friend David Diebel says in his stand-up routine, he got married old school to a woman.
Diebel's great.
Yeah. So he couldn't figure out whether she was pro-choice or pro-life because she's a woman. So he literally didn't know what to tell her. So he gave an incredibly squishy, mealy-mouthed answer.
Very professional.
He's a pro.
He is a pro politician. So I'm sure he's going to run for a Senate, U.S. Senate in 2022.
Okay.
Because that's when we have one senator, we have two Democrats. Jeanne Shaheen is up for re-election this time. And then Maggie Hassan, who they're both former governors. So in New Hampshire, you're governor for a few terms, then you run for Senate.
Okay.
So I'm sure he'll run against Maggie Hassan. It's her first term. She was elected in 2016 against Kelly Ayotte. And she won her election against Kelly Ayotte by fewer than 1,000 votes.
Mm.
So this is Maggie Hassan, our current U.S. Senator, won in 2016 by fewer than 1,000 votes. And Kelly Ayotte, a month before the election, or whenever the Access Hollywood video hit job drop thing was, Kelly Ayotte called on Trump to drop out of the race. And I personally know people who told me that they were not going to vote for her. And they're big Trump supporters.
Yep.
And so, on the other hand, Trump lost to Hillary by 2,600 votes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's entirely accounted for by out-of-state college students, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
We have like 10,000 students at UNH,
Mhm.
and they can all vote. And then, Dartmouth and various other colleges, they can vote in New Hampshire.
Well, I've heard it said that the Republican Party really wants to flip some Senate seats and some state houses. All they have to do is get 20,000 Republicans to move to to Vermont. And sounds like New Hampshire could be reliably a lot if we could get 2,000 Republicans to move there.
Yeah, but what's happening instead is that people from Massachusetts move up here.
Mm-hmm.
And, but a lot of people I was talking to a friend yesterday when we were talking about people move here to get away from there.
Yeah.
And as soon as they move here, they start voting for the things that they didn't like about there. Taxes. We have no state income tax and no state sales tax in New Hampshire.
Yeah, that's still the case then. Good.
Yeah. Well,
Because I used to live in Massachusetts.
It's still the case because Sununu has 2 years in a row vetoed taxes.
Because I used to live in Massachusetts, and we always admired the lack of taxes in New Hampshire, and there are a lot of people who lived in New Hampshire and just worked over the border in Massachusetts. So you have sounds on the border like Nashua and all.
Right, and Nashua enacted a mask mandate. in May or June. And there was another town, I'm forgetting which one, but just this week was going to vote on whether to fine you $1,000 if you weren't wearing a mask. I don't know if it might have been Manchester or Concord, but I think it was some other town. And it's bonkers to me.
So before we run out of time, I want to ask, can you show us the Ricochet servers right there behind you or something? Perhaps the hamsters running the wheel.
Here you go. Ricochet.com is run off of this drive right here.
That's it, people.
There you go.
Why don't we get to in the last 5 minutes, we'll get to this has been great talking about everything. We'll get to a couple of the Ricochet questions that we normally ask at the beginning of the show and get into that. So
he's got his questions.
Yeah.
I didn't realize I thought that we were going to Joe Rogan this and go on for 5 hours.
Oh, God.
Which there was last week, I think, there was an episode that was like 6 hours long or something.
Oh, wow.
Of Joe Rogan?
Yeah. Him and one, like a actual friend of his. And I listened to like at least 2.5 hours of it. And then
I watch some guys on YouTube and they normally do like these 3-4 hour streams and stuff.
Yeah.
So, so how did you get involved in Ricochet?
Okay, so I grew up in Maine. I was had Democrat parents
And president.
and I moved to New York City for my girlfriend, who is now my wife, who is also from Maine, but she was already in New York, and we met in Maine, but she lived in New York, so I moved to New York. And we were both Democrats. And then, New York in 2005, when I moved there was still a smoking hole from 9/11, started feeling like national security is really a sort of a thing now, and for me. And then taxes, I mean, I was starting my working career, and there were a lot of taxes, and the sales tax, and there's a state sales tax, county sales tax, city sales tax, borough sales tax, and same for income tax. So just up the wazoo. So I was like really concerned about national security, really don't like taxes. And then in 2008, when the primaries were going on, I really didn't like Barack Obama because I thought he was a liar. I thought he was being propped up. He hadn't actually ever done anything. And then I found out about the Illinois Born Alive Protection Act, which was the bill that if you go in for an abortion and it's a late term abortion, the doctor botches it, they have to try to save that baby. That was the first time I really ever thought about what an abortion was, which is killing a baby. And Barack Obama was the only legislator in Illinois who voted against that bill. And he voted hundreds of times or over 100 times present because he didn't want to take a position. But he really wanted to take a position that he was not in favor of saving a baby that was born alive, which is at least consistent, because what did that woman go into that office or facility to do? Kill that baby. So what does it matter if the baby is born by accident alive? The goal was still to kill that baby, right? Mm-hmm. So it's at least consistent, but it really opened my eyes, and I became a Republican.
Okay.
And I've always said I'm a Republican because of what I believe. I don't believe what I believe because I'm a Republican. And I can say that because I used to be a Democrat or think I was a Democrat. And it turned out that all my things that I believed in were Republican. So, and my wife, we had the same sort of drift together. And one of the first things when we were going that way, she had seen a video podcast interview or debate between Jonah Goldberg and a guy who used to write for the New Republic. You might recognize his name, but I'm forgetting it right now. But and she was like, wow, Jonah Goldberg makes so much more sense than this other guy who's supposedly on my side. So then that was right when Jonah wrote Liberal Fascism, and so I bought it for her for Christmas or something. And that introduced us to National Review. And we started subscribing to National Review and reading The Corner at National Review and various other conservative publications. And it was at National Review where at one point Peter Robinson said, oh, I started this website called Ricochet, because he used to write more for The Corner. I think they still post like some of his Uncommon Knowledge videos there. But anyway, so that was how we got to Ricochet. And so I was active as a member and writing posts and all of that. And I started sort of bugging the Blue Yeti, who is the head honcho. His real name is Scott Immergut. And he, so then we decided to move to New Hampshire because we want to get out of New York. Mm-hmm. And in the meantime, my wife had started working for National Review, where she's an editor at National Review. So that was great because she had a job that she could work anywhere. She didn't need to. She used to work in the office at National Review, but she works here now. So we moved to New Hampshire, and I had no job. And like the week that we were moving, Scott emailed me and was like, why don't I just start paying you? And then it sort of, increased from there. So that's how I started working at Ricochet, is that I made myself a nuisance basically. And that was 2014.
Cool.
That was,
and what do you like most like about this little site we have going here, Ricochet?
I like people. I'm a people person. Some people might be surprised at that because I'm also an extremely cranky person. And but I love going to a bar and talking to people, or going to a diner and talking to people, and I like arguing. So I just it's just like perfect for me because so many different viewpoints. You can argue, you can try to make your point, you can hone your skills.
That's important, I think.
Yeah.
Honing one's debating skills.
Yeah. Of course, you have to be able to say, I guess I was wrong about that. If you're wrong about that.
Yeah.
And if you're not wrong about it, you have to figure out how to explain it. That's the hard part. I've had arguments with people that when I used to be on Facebook, and not anymore. I have a Facebook account, but only so that I can administer the Ricochet Facebook page. But I used to argue with people that I had known in college when I was liberal. Mm-hmm. And they really couldn't figure out what was going on. And I used to get accused of, oh, well, you're only saying that because you're parroting the party line or whatever. And I always thought, well,
said someone who was parroting the party line.
Yeah, I was like, well, between the two of us, I'm the one who's demonstrated that I can reevaluate my worldview and, adjust as necessary. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, there's always the whole thing about, at least in religious terms, that converts are the most sort of, strident, I guess would be the word, and strident proselytizers.
Yeah.
But, so that's what I like about Ricochet, is that there's different people and you can argue. I like arguing.
Yeah, you mentioned.
So that's also my weakness, I guess. I when we moved here to small town New Hampshire, I immediately started going to meetings of the Board of Selectmen, which is the 3-person governing body of our town. We don't have a mayor; we have a Board of Selectmen.
It's like a city council, then.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they actually, I swear to God, they shut down public comment because of me.
All right.
So we in New Hampshire, we have right to know law. You have a right to be present at the meeting. You do not have a right to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But they would do a public comment section
Right.
at the end of the meeting. And I would point out that they had broken this or that law. If they had, which they had on numerous occasions.
Mm-hmm.
Having to do with money expenditures and access to records and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was, a total pain in the butt. And for about 1.5 years, they shut down public comment for everybody. And then the woman who was the chairman when I first got there, she didn't run for re-election.
Mm-hmm.
And ever since she left, the 3 guys who are there now, they brought it back, even though I have also yelled at them on occasion. But as I say, I know, all of them, and I see them at the store or whatever, and I can, there's one guy that used to be a used car salesman, and he's just like, he will look you in the face and he will just lie to you. But he's kind of an okay guy,
We have a city council here where they with the public comment section, and there's one old guy who used to come to every meeting and complain about the same thing. Some Sea Scouts building that was decommissioned, and if he ran out of time, if he had extra time when he was finished, he would start singing a song or something. And he was a regular every time he came by.
They give you a certain amount of time.
Yeah, I think that was it.
Yeah, we had
something like 2 minutes.
Yeah, we had a town near here, 2 towns over, where they had a 5-minute rule. And so the guy who was like the me of that town, he sat down to talk, and he had his phone, and he was like, "I'm doing a 5-minute timer, so I know I won't go over." And then he started saying, "You guys are all embarrassments, and you should retire. You should resign." And they said, "Okay, you're done." And he was like, "What are you talking about? I have 5 minutes." And they're like, "No, you can't talk." And they called in the police chief and arrested him and dragged him out of the meeting. And then as soon as he was gone, they said, "Does anybody else want to talk?" He sued the crap out of them, and
Good.
They lost, because that was just like such a clear-cut example of viewpoint discrimination. If you can't say that other people. And the other thing was that the next person who talked started off by saying, "Well, I think you guys are doing a great job." So they didn't let the guy who was criticized anyway. So he got a $50,000 judgment or something.
Yeah. Good. Well, we've been talking for about an hour now, and I discovered something, unfortunately, with the on the views on. If we go over an hour, our views drop pretty hard. That's what I discovered with Arizona Patriot after that one. So I'm just. It's been great talking to you, and that's why I'm trying to get through the last few questions there. So
I'll
I always end
myself
by asking the same sort of question. Who would you like to see us interview next?
Wow. I think that you should interview she.
Yes, we've reached out to her. She's really busy, but she did say she would do it.
Okay, cool.
Mhm.
And I know you reached out to Dawn as well, but the other Dawn.
Don. Oh, there's a Don G.
Doug, rather. Sorry.
Doug.
Yeah,
Doug.
we have reached out to Doug.
Yeah.
Brian was going to talk to him. I don't know. Brian had an interesting experience with our comic section last time, so I'm not too sure if he's still happy with
Oh,
it. But this is why Don here has to do all the announcements. I really need to give it to you.
oh no.
You're much better at crafting the message there, Don. But,
Oh no, you're learning. You're learning. It's great. You're getting better.
yeah, well, I do. The secret to getting your post posted to the main list, as Don says, is you need to write it while you have a drink in hand. So,
yeah.
Anyways, this has been a lot.
This
of
is
fun.
iced tea.
Yeah. Well, mine is Smirnoff Ice.
I think that's Irish posting, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyways, it's been a great
We make
time
ethnic
talking
jokes.
to you. And
Thanks,
I'll,
guys.
Yeah,
It's great talking to you, Max.
let's try to do this
So
again
good to see you.
sometime. Bye.
Take care, man. Bye.
Bye.